I'm going to do my intro as I normally do my intro. Or should we just roll right into it? I think you should just go with whatever we're just saying and just use this. I'll just start. Jared, Polin from photo.com, and welcome to a podcast with Steven and I. Here's Steven. Hey, Steven.
Hello.
So this is obviously different than what we've done for quite a while. But what's interesting is Steven and I spend time talking to each other on the phone when he's not here, of course. And we spend an hour or two a day discussing different things, and we get done the calls and we're like, we should have done this as a podcast for the most part.
Yep. Every day, probably at least a 2-hour conversation, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, usually it's broken up across the day, of course, when we're talking about different things. But we start talking about cameras, and we start talking about lenses, and we start talking about business, and then we all of a sudden are like, well, gee, that was a 35-40 minute call. We could have turned it into a podcast, kind of like the old days.
Content is key.
Yeah, but so we decided to do it today, and we all know. And Steven and I talk about this all the time, that the key to podcasting is consistency, that people know, so that people know when to tune in. Like, I get upset when someone does a podcast and then they don't do a podcast for a while. Like Heavyweights is a podcast that I listen to that I haven't even checked in on a while because they haven't even done one for like 6 months. And it gets a little frustrating.
Well, and you end up forgetting about them.
Right, and I'm sure people liked my Daily Froze when I was keeping up with Daily Froze, and I still like doing them, and I'll probably keep adding to them every once in a while, but I really haven't done a lot of them because we've been doing a lot of other stuff, and I don't want to just sit and complain into the microphone, and I'll still do that here, but I kind of like having it both ways, kind of. I like when I can do it myself, and then I like it doing it with others, like Steven. Thank God we don't have Todd on here, because he'd be going a little off on he'd be getting off on a lot of those conversations. But the whole idea is that we just want to have me be as normal as possible, a normal conversation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I like in the podcasts that I listen to these days. I listen to a thing called Pivot podcast. It's a technology thing with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, and I just like that they have their topics and they have a really good discussion. And on occasion they the dog Scott Galloway goes off a little bit and does some funny stuff, but it kind of follows along the lines of what we were doing since 2013, 14 with RAWtalk.
It's crazy how long it's been.
Yeah, we were one of the early people to do a video podcast, and we may turn this thing into a video. I mean, that's a question that we leave to you guys, is would you want to see this on YouTube, us having a discussion? You can text us at 313-710-9729. That's the text line that I've built up over the past couple years. The thing with the video is it adds a lot of extra work, whereas Steven and I can sit down here, record our audio together, and then he can quickly go through and get it out into the world, where video takes a heck of a lot longer.
Well, and the issue with video, I just think it's unnecessary. Unless you're a visual-based podcast, which with RAWtalk, when we were doing that, to a certain extent we were, because we would talk about the photo news stories and we would incorporate video or video from our trips or photos of the product or whatever it may be. But with this, we're simply just kind of chatting, there's nothing more to it to really show. Do people really care to see a talking head? Well, at least with me, even if it is a YouTube podcast that's in video form, I'll play it, but I'll still be walking around doing whatever it may be doing, around the house or driving my car or something like that. I tend to strictly listen to podcasts and not really watch it.
Yeah. I mean, when I listen to podcasts, it's either driving in my car or sitting out having tea, but I can't do podcasts and work because I want to pay attention, or I'm in an airplane and that's when I'm listening to it. I do like our old setup. I like the way that we had that. I still have the Wheel of Fro off here to the right-hand side. We bought those 4K TVs that we barely used. We
used them for a good 2 years, I'd say.
We were so far ahead of the curve with quality live switch. I mean, we were doing live way before the pandemic, when everybody started to do live. Yeah. And we had a really good setup and a really good show. It's just that I've talked about why I toned it down or killed it at the time, is just for a refresher for some people, it was a lot of work. You know, we had Todd come in, we had Steven come in, we had me in here, we had Dan in here, we had the entire team, and it was not just the day of, well, when Steven used to edit it, it was a lot of extra editing. When you did the live switching, it was a little less polished, but it still took a lot. It still took a full day plus to get everything set and edited.
Which for a produced product like that, I really don't think is that much time. I mean, before it was taking us, 3 to 4 days to fully, film, edit, export, upload, all of that. But then with the live switching, it eventually became like a 1 day full process, because I would still have to research photo news, and we would have to set everything up and then do the actual live show. And then after the fact, post the news stories on the website.
Yeah. Well,
it was a whole day, but still in the end, it wasn't that much in 1 day.
And people enjoyed it. I think part of the problem was trying to figure out how to, I didn't title them very well back then. We didn't title them the way that I started to title Photo News Fix and why Photo News Fix took off. We could, and that's why we kind of stopped. Once Photo News Fix started, it made RAWtalk a little redundant in some ways, because we did a couple of RAWtalks and then we put titles up that were similar to what they would have been in Fix, and they get more views, but how's the long-term watch time, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we should put this on a separate channel. I think if we do video again, we can have a set, we can make it work. I still would like another editor for some ancillary content that we could do, so it just takes a lot off of our plate, so we can focus on the stuff, especially one of the first topics that we'll end up talking about here. But I could see starting up it at some point if we can make it an easier lift. And honestly, do 40 to 50,000 views is pretty darn good to have a piece of content. It also works from a business standpoint, because then you could sell plug spots if we really wanted. But anyway, that's getting more into the business side. We've got a bunch of topics to talk about, and these are things that Steven and I sit here and talk about all the time. So we figured we would just go into it right here. And the first topic is shorts and reels. We've been testing them out.
Yes, we have.
The first one that we did, so we fought doing this for a long time. And that's a lot of discussions that we've had, is like, we don't want to make this short content. We don't want to make content that's just throwaway. We don't want to do a half-assed job and call it, just chase numbers. But talking to a bunch of different people that do these and seeing that they do get big numbers and they were adding good subscribers, that was kind of more of the catalyst, was the subscriber numbers. Like, if you can add a subscriber, so at first I was like, cool, they added 25,000 subscribers, but is that of value? Are those the people that you want? But
is it strictly vanity numbers, or like you said, is it actually value?
I think the views are mostly vanity numbers, but if you get this, if you can add 25,000 subscribers, who cares if 20,000 of them don't pay attention after a while, but you did gain 5,000 eyeballs that might not have seen your stuff before? That's what it's all about.
Do we know how YouTube counts a view for a short? Is it 1 second of watching? Is it 10 seconds, 30 seconds?
That's a good question. I don't know. A regular video is 30 seconds. Because I believe
long form is 30, yeah. So I'm curious if it's like, if you're scrolling through your feed TikTok style and watching 7 seconds, is that a view or not? Which is probably why most of the shorts have a lot
And
of views.
I guarantee you it's right away. I guarantee you it's a 3-second view, and that's what Facebook
I would think
would have done. So
yeah.
So we, I fought it for a while, and we still question doing it. I put up some reels on Instagram that were just basic me filming and then posting it, and they'd get maybe 100,000 or 50 to 100,000 views, which is pretty good. But then we came up with the impossible shot when I went out to the Phillies game and got this Christian Yelich breaking his bat, shooting at 120 frames per second. It was one of those things that just happened. You've probably seen it. If you haven't, go check it out. It's on you. We put it on YouTube as a short. We put it on Instagram as a reel. And Steven, talk about the difficulties of making a vertical piece of content after the fact when it wasn't created for that.
So the tough part, obviously, with shorts is everything is vertical. However, with the impossible shot, the entire photo series, the burst that you shot was all horizontal. And I really couldn't zoom in or anything because the frame is so tight. So there's a lot of difficulty. And also with finding B-roll to accompany the impossible shot, the actual photos, everything was shot obviously horizontal. So I'm trying to crop in vertical and trying to pan and always be moving the frame. And the goal of these shorts is to try and make it a half a day edit or 1 day at most. You know, we're trying not to spend that much time while we're experimenting. And that's still difficult because even finding the right pacing, the right song, that alone will take 30 minutes, maybe even an hour to find the right song, the right BPMs. Also sound effects. We try and make them really interesting with sound effects. The whole point of shorts, in my opinion, is if you don't catch them within the first, I mean, even like 3 seconds, I feel like they're passing you by. And this is fresh eyes, not Frono's Photo subscribers, but people that are just scrolling through shorts. So yeah, it's a difficult challenge to make a short, and again, also keep everything in below 60 seconds, under 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But it's still an experiment, and we're trying. I mean, obviously the Impossible Shot really worked well for us on both YouTube to a certain extent, and especially on Instagram. But I mean, how many subs did we end up getting from YouTube alone?
Well, YouTube, I think it's over 700. I'll take a look in a minute at the numbers, but the Impossible,
which I guess is a lot, right?
Well, that's a lot compared to our normal videos. Yeah, I can go into the analytics in a minute, but I think that you did obviously a great job with that first one, and a lot of commenters that have seen it are like, "Wow, if all shorts were done like this, I'd love watching it."
And again, the hard part also is to make something out of nothing. I mean, we are literally creating something out of nothing from your script to the end, video edit. It's very difficult to really imagine how it's going to be in the end with really no pre-production. It's kind of like, all right, let's hope we can make something out of this. And usually we can.
Yeah. And that's my voice. People don't think it's my voice, but Steven has a pretty good background
compression
on the compression side. And
I believe you actually record under a blanket for those, right?
Yeah, you make me go under the blanket to do those.
We don't have the terrible acoustics of the Fro Factory with the giant high ceilings and audio bouncing all around. No. It actually sounds nice and clean and warm.
Yeah, I have to put a blanket over my head and I go, "This is the Canon R7, a camera that is packed full of tons of specs." Yeah, and I get into that whole thing, and I like the way it sounds. I'm a big fan of how it sounds.
And again, you got to right away catch them with, this is the R7, this is the Impossible Shot, whatever it may be. You kind of got to, I mean, content is obviously key with the shorts, and the hard part. See, the thing with shorts too is I think it can be a very polished high-end video, or it could even be something filmed with your phone, but the stuff with your phone needs to be an incredibly rare moment captured, or something that's like remarkable and you're going to have eyes on it, or just something very interesting. But yes. I still like to always up the level with production in terms of, I think people will then hopefully you earn their sub at that point.
Exactly. And so, we're testing it out. The Yelich one, the one on Instagram, has 681,000 views. Now at the beginning, it went to 100,000, in the first day or two, and then it stopped. Like, it stopped on Instagram. It just stopped. And then like a week and a half or so later, it went to 200,000. Then it was 300,000 the next morning. A few hours later, 400,000. And it just kept going and going. And I think it's come to the end right now, but I'm sure it goes through a cycle and it will go back up.
It's weird how it works. It's hills and valleys, ebbs and flows with that. It'll pause and then go right back up, and it's a roller coaster ride with that stuff.
Yeah, and the short on YouTube did not very good early on. It didn't really do anything, and then it started to build a little bit, because right now it has 175,000 views. Let me take a look at the analytics a little closer, because I have it pulled up in the Studio app.
Which is good. Saying it's not a big number, but it's not a million views.
No, but I'm looking at the numbers. It's doing 315 views in the last 60 minutes. It's done 16,000 more views in the last 48 hours. And I could show Steven this because he can see my screen. You guys obviously can't right now, but you can see the peaks and valleys. It goes up for 8 to 10 hours, then it dives for 3 to 4 hours. And then it goes up again for 8 to 10 hours, and then it dives again.
And I'm curious, when it does go back up, is that someone that's, they're scrolling through their shorts feed and all of a sudden they see this and they're actually watching it for a longer quote unquote watch time? And does that then tell the algorithm, let's feed it out to other people? And then when it starts to die again, it'll eventually start back up. But is that how, I don't know how it works.
I don't know either. And YouTube really doesn't, but it's added 762 subscribers, which is pretty good in comparison to, let's see a video. Well, let's see how many we did with This Changes Everything. That's a little abnormal to the type of video that we normally make. That only added 292 subscribers. And so in about the same amount of views, because this has 188,000 views, the other has 175,000 views, the other one's added 500 more subscribers. Which
now, what about from an ad revenue perspective?
Well,
because I feel like Shorts, they just started monetizing them, at least as far as I know.
We don't. That short says about $38,
which is very odd for the views it got.
Right, and it says $1,000 we've made since the other one. $1,061.42 is the one with the Apple stuff. So it's not about the money here. And also, we did the R7 one, and it absolutely looks like an ad, but Canon didn't pay us for that. No one paid us for that. We're testing out our capabilities to be able to deliver something in 60 seconds. And that's not easy.
I like to call it, I like to refer to it as a product showcase, almost that type of video where we can use that as a template moving forward to potential sponsors. Say, hey, if you don't have the budget for a full long form sponsored video, which we don't do very often, and if we do, we straight up say it, maybe you want to try out a 1 minute short for half the budget or something like that. I feel like that's kind of nice to throw out there as a offer.
Yeah, but the thing about those is, like, if you get one that hits and it gets 1 million views, they care more about that 1 million views. We end up getting more views on that than we would end up getting on a regular video,
1,000%.
which is insane. So when I talk to my ad guy, because I do have an ad guy that we work with that negotiates these things for us, we'd still put a big number on that.
Has he done anything with Shorts with other creators or anyone else, or Reels?
I don't believe so. I mean, we would do, we would include Reels. I think we did one when it was the OnePlus, which was absolutely a sponsored video. The OnePlus one that we did, you guys would know it's sponsored because we flat out say it. I think we included a couple of Reels at the time because Reels. Or were they short? They weren't shorts, but Reels or story. It was Reels.
Or Instagram TV, maybe?
No, it wasn't Instagram TV. It was Reels because I was like, oh, these are starting to do something. Let me just add it to this. So anyway, we're testing them out. And no, they're not ads for these companies like Canon or Nikon. They come across that way because they're a showcase of what we're capable of doing. And I think it will help us in the long run. And I think the majority of people understand that. But then, of course, there's always people that think you're just shilling it to the max, which we're not doing.
Yeah. So it's, we're still experimenting. We're still playing around with them. I'm curious what the audience thinks in terms of, do they prefer shorts? Do they not? I mean, I'm still debating myself if I even care for shorts. I really like long form. But I
don't look at shorts at all on YouTube. On YouTube, I don't look. See, I don't use the short. I really don't use the YouTube app very much.
I don't either. I use the YouTube app, but I do not use the Shorts feed really ever.
Yeah, I don't like most of the content. It's not like I can learn from it. Some of the stuff's interesting, but most of the stuff isn't. And it's also a repeat of what's on Instagram, and it's a repeat of what's on TikTok. And so it's not really my jam, but if we can add new eyeballs, then that's the key. But I don't want us to sit here and take things I say. I mean, when I was on that Coffee Hour podcast with Graham Stephan, they cut up a couple of clips that ended up getting 3 million views on TikTok and 1 million views on Instagram Reels. And they were just me relaying stories. And I mean, I guess we could technically do that. I mean, it's all Gary Vee does. All Gary Vee does is take all the stuff that he says in other videos and they chop it up and put it out as video.
Essentially, the R7 short we just did is a cut up form of the R7 R10 preview.
Right. I just think that they do less work than we do because all they do is take a guy sitting behind a desk going, it's all about empathy and all of that, and here it is, and then they post it and then it gets a lot of views, and it's just like a lighter form of content.
It's a lot easier to produce those too.
Yeah, because it's words where we're photography and we're trying to teach. So anyway, that's that topic. You could always text us 313-710-9729. Let us know what you think about the shorts and the reels. We're going to keep testing them out. We're not going to do them every day, all day, because I do think that it might hurt some people's channels, because if that's all they're doing, they're chasing vanity numbers. We're definitely chasing numbers, but I think we're chasing subscribers, new eyeballs more than than the vanity numbers.
The question is, are those subscribers actual people that will watch our videos and are interested in photography? Or that's why I think we do really need to keep the shorts photo-centric to a certain extent and not just about random things that are interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
I know we talked about the Kodak Reels, for example, doing one in the future about that. Like, I find that very interesting, and it still skews towards photo and video, obviously.
For those who don't know, there's a Kodak, it's not, I mean, it has Kodak's name on it, but it's a China-made 8mm, super 8mm, basically projector scanner. So literally the reel, it's a reel-to-reel, and it has a screen on it. And what it does is when you're each frame, what is it, like 8 frames or 15 frames
it's 15 frames a second.
So 15 frames a second go past this LED light that shines into, I guess, a camera, and it takes a picture every time, and then it cuts it together into, I guess, a motion JPEG video at the end, and now you have
barely 1080p, yeah.
But it still looks amazing because we pulled one out from 1948.
For what, and you do have manual settings that you can adjust for the projection onto the sensor, but we just kind of set it at auto, and it still looked pretty cool.
It looked pretty cool watching that stuff come to life. And what you don't know, Steven, is I went on a buying spree on eBay, and I probably bought about 300 different 300
cost me
different
$12
reels.
to buy 300 reels.
Didn't cost. I spent a couple $100.
And what did we figure out? The 3-inch reels were like 5 minutes of video or 3 minutes of video or something like that.
They're 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And then each inch goes up. It's like more, obviously.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was 3 minutes for the 3-inch. I believe the smaller reel was 3 minutes. And
but I think doing something like that, I mean, I find that interesting, and it still kind of stays down that photocentric path.
But would that be better
extent.
as a long form piece of content too?
I know.
Because it's like
there's so much to say, and it's so hard to say it in 60 seconds or less.
I know, and that's why when I was writing the short for the R7, there's only so much I can say. That's why I cut out certain things. I didn't mention certain features. I can't give a lot of commentary. I can't sit there and say, this is the greatest camera ever, and here's what I like or here's what I don't like. It's literally hit the specs and also pick words and things that we can showcase stuff that we have footage of.
Yeah, it's not a review. I saw some people saying, like, all you said was positive pros about the camera, and it's like, well, guys, it's simply like a quick showcase announcing this brand new camera that just came out.
Yeah, watch our review.
This is not a review.
No.
We just did a 22-minute review, long form. Preview. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
It never called that a review, Steven.
Even though it was production cameras for the first time.
It was. But let's move into the next topic, which is the Florida trip. How much did Canon pay you to come down on that trip, Steven?
A ton of money. Too much money.
Yeah, I think that trip actually cost me more money because we went in a day early.
You had to pay for the hotel room.
I did. I paid for a night for each of us because we don't room together. So we went in a day early because we went out to dinner with Manny Ortiz and another friend of ours. I'll call him a friend. You're laughing. But yeah, it's a baseball player, and we went out to. He's a photographer. So there's only so many baseball players that are photographers. Let's see if anybody can guess. You can text us your guesses at 313-710-9729. Which baseball player did we go to dinner with in Orlando? That's one of the greatest baseball players of all time. That's also a photographer.
Top 10. Yeah. Pretty
Steven,
amazing.
there's a jackhammer outside my window right now.
Well, luckily I don't really hear it, but
there is a jackhammer outside
we're doing
my
this
window.
via Zoom, and Zoom has that auto noise cancellation where you're recording in Adobe Audition in the back, and I'm curious if that's picking it up.
Audition isn't picking it up because it's pretty low. I can see that it's not even going up when I'm talking.
Well, wait till I hit it with some compression.
You hit it. This is Jared Polin.
This is the Canon R7.
Anyway, so let's talk about that Florida trip. This was the first press trip that we've had post-pandemic. And so it came together pretty late. Canon got in touch with us like a week before the trip.
Yeah.
And the kind of issue, to give you a little bit of behind the scenes on the whole thing, is they had a trip. We got home Friday, and Monday into Tuesday morning at midnight, the stuff was being announced. And generally, it's nice to have a week to work on content. In this case, we had one business day to actually kind of do our preview of the R7 and R10 in one video.
And that is the key. issue is that there were not just one there wasn't just one camera, there were 2 cameras that we had to get done in about a day.
Yeah. It's yeah. Anyway, so we like press trips, but I think what people misinterpret about press trips is they think they're vacations.
Yeah.
And the way that I explain it to everybody, and I explain it to these companies, I'm like, look, this is not a vacation for Steven and I. One, Steven's got a salary, right? And if Steven is with me on the road, that means he's not back at the studio or back home, and he's here the whole time, which means he's going to have to take off a day somewhere, right? Because this is like extra time, and has to be taken into consideration. Whereas people that work for, say, Petapixel or DP Review or any of those other publications that might go to these things, they're hired guns. They work for a larger company, and they like to get out of the office and can see it more as like, cool, I don't have to be in the office now. It's kind of like when you had a school trip. You're like, well, I'm not in school today. But for us, we run this business small, right? And if we're not around here, then it's more difficult to get the content that we have on our plate that we need to make. But we also know how important it is to go on these trips, because obviously if you have a good relationship or a good rapport with these companies, you end up getting gear to use, unlike Fuji, who does not even acknowledge my existence any longer.
No, Fuji loves you.
So no, we will not be probably doing a new review of the XT2S or XH2S, because I sent them an email. I was like, hey guys, I'm Jared. Remember me? Am I still banned? Does Fuji Japan still not like me? What? You don't want me to say all that stuff, Steven?
Oh, I don't care.
Basically,
say whatever you want.
I think what happened is, I think they told me, and this is going back to 2016 or 17 or something. I think the reviews that we did of Fuji products were actually pretty favorable. We did one at the boxing gym, was really, really good back in the day. We did one
that was like the XT1 or 2.
Yeah, something. And we did one over at the skate park that we thought was really good. And I think I said something negative.
And we did multiple lens reviews too.
Well, I said one thing negative about a lens.
The 90 millimeter, I believe.
Super slow. And that was their reasoning they cited for not wanting to send me gear. Could you imagine if Nikon played by those rules? You know,
Nikon, or Canon and Sony. I mean, we've definitely said negative things about every company. It's just, it is what it is.
Right.
You know?
And
it's our opinion.
Right. Well, it's our opinion that is based on actually
our opinion
using
that's fact.
Stuff. It's our opinion that's based in reality, because we use this stuff.
Yeah.
So the trips work where they call us and they say, hey, we're going to do a press trip. Do you want to go? And I'm usually like, no. Or more so like, yeah, I want to go, but where? Thankfully, this one was in Orlando, so it's only a 2.5-hour flight instead of having to go cross country and burn a whole day. Those become a pain in the ass. That happened a few years ago with Sony and Canon. They were all trying to one-up each other, and Canon even took us to
Hawaii trip.
Hawaii.
That was like a 2-day travel day for us right there.
Yeah, it's just a long way to go. So these trips are fun.
They are. It's still a lot of work. I mean, we're only there for usually 2 to 3 days, because usually the first day is essentially a travel day. So we come in, say, midday, we check in, we then have a welcome dinner for the most part. And then usually there is when a presentation of some sort will happen, and we'll actually find out why we're there. Because there are, most of the times, we don't know why we're going or what we're going for. We don't know if it's a lens, a camera body. I mean, usually we'll rely on the rumor websites at that point, and they're typically accurate. But yeah, we usually don't find out until the night of, when we're actually there, what we're there for. And there's definitely been trips where we're like, really? We're here for a lens and that's it? And we're here for 4 days?
That was Sony. And
I didn't know if you wanted to say it.
I'm going to say it. That trip was
24 millimeter 1.4.
That was the 24-1.4. They flew us out. Really, the first 2 days, and we were in San Fran. The first 2 days were like, they didn't even tell us what we were there for yet.
Nope, we had no idea.
And so when they finally told us that it was for a lens, I was like, are you guys fucking kidding me?
Everyone said that pretty much.
It's like, you brought us out here for 4 fucking days for a lens? And this is when it was just getting absurd. And I'm like, well, I just can't. I actually changed our flight. I had them change it to the day before we were supposed to leave. I'm like, we're going home.
We took a red eye, didn't we?
It was late. Yeah, it was a late flight.
Or close to it.
I remember us getting picked up at the stadium at not Candlestick, but whatever, AT&T Park or whatever it's called, the new one. Yeah. And we just took a flight. I'm like, I can't do this, guys. I'm not going home to fuck this. Get us out of here. Change our flights. And because what they have to understand, these companies, Canon, Sony, we don't work for them. I'm not there to kiss their ass. I'm there to do work. We're there to do work. And so if I don't like something, I'm going to tell them. Prime example is generally around food. We started, well, my eating. I like to eat well.
Don't let Jared go on a shoot hangry. I'll tell you that.
Well, here's the thing. The Florida trip, the recent one, Orlando, we had basically a 6 a.m. wake-up call because we had to be on the bus between 6:45 and 7 a.m. Now, I have no problem starting early. I don't want to sleep in. The whole point of us being here is to work. The problem is that if you tell me that you're supplying a continental breakfast means you're supplying garbage, carbs, sugars, not actual meals. Oh yeah, you good luck functioning on pastries and coffee.
No, I couldn't even eat it. Yeah,
and so all I ever ask for. And I did, and it wasn't actually supplied the first day, but by the day we were leaving, they had a full-on omelet station. They had a waffle station. So they got the memo. But basically, my whole thing is, look, I'm here working. I would prefer that you would just send us the gear to the studio and we have our own time. Because let's look at that. Let's look at that, because if they were to send us the gear, Steven and I would work together for a day going and doing a shoot. Then Steven would finish the rest of that day doing B-roll, and then into the next day, probably a quarter to a half of it, going and getting the B-roll that he needs. But then we're done. We're home. We're done. It's all over in a day and a half. And then the editing can start. Whereas here, it's like you fly in on a Wednesday, you shoot all day Thursday, you have to fly on Friday. I mean, we literally flew Friday, got home at 12 o'clock around noon, and then went to lunch, and then came right into the studio to film the preview part, because that's the only opportunity we had.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead. Sorry, go on. Well, I was going to say, and to piggyback off that, again, the whole, it's not a vacation, it's purely a business trip. We had, again, Wednesday flew in, Thursday we shot all day, and then Thursday night, I had to then go back to the hotel room because I knew we couldn't take the cameras home, and I had to then film all beauty shots of each camera. Again, 2 models, not just one, and then I had to record the entire menu system.
You had 2 models in your bedroom?
And then I had to record the entire menu system. I mean, I was up until 1 a.m., I think, doing all of that, and then we had to be up early the next morning to leave.
I was sleeping.
Yeah. I didn't go to bed until pretty late. And then again, we came home Friday and we had to film it right away. And I don't do well on airplanes in general. I tend to get pretty bad headaches in the air. And so I'm trying to make the spec list and all of the notes and a recap of our entire trip and us using the camera on the airplane. So when we do land, first thing, we can essentially go over the notes together and film right away. And that's what we did. And I don't think we were finished until 6 o'clock Friday. And then it was time to edit.
Yeah, and the video actually went live 6 or 7 minutes after midnight because it was still... Steven texted me. He's working all day, and then he's like, it's exporting. So it's 11:46 p.m. It's exporting.
Well, it started at around 11:10. 11, I think, is when I started.
And it finished the export, and then he uploads it around 11:46. And what happens is it has to process on the back of YouTube, which we've got fast upload, but then YouTube does this thing called checks, and sometimes the checks are delayed, and I'm not going to put it live until those checks are done because notifications don't go out. It's a whole behind-the-scenes thing that happens. But we did get it out, and obviously I think the video scored the highest from anybody that was out on the road with us, and I think it was good. But back to the food thing, the pastries things don't work, and I go to the coordinators that run these things, and I'm like, hey, what is breakfast tomorrow? And again, it's like, I shouldn't just be like, hey, thanks, this is amazing that you're supplying us some food. It's like, no, it's got to be the right food. I'm like, can you get some hard-boiled eggs? Can you get a banana? Can you get a oatmeal? And so when I go, the oatmeal they bring out, I just said raw oatmeal, just straight up oatmeal. They brought it out. It had all the sugar on it. It had all the fruit on it, and I didn't want that.
All the fun stuff.
I gave that. I think Ted Forbes ate that. So
he did. He asked me. He's like, "You want some?" It's Jared's. I'm like, "What?"
No, because then I just wanted the raw. So they brought me out the raw. I'm like, "Any bananas?" Like, "Oh, we don't have a banana." So but I bring my own protein. So I had all that. But anyway, the reason I make a big deal out of that stuff is I'm like, we're going to be working all day, and we can't work while eating garbage.
Exactly.
Garbage in is garbage out.
The issue was we didn't only have not one photo shoot set up that day, but we had 4 shoots set up, and it was essentially going to be an all-day shoot until I think 5 or 6 o'clock. Now we did end up coming back early, but
we
still,
did.
I mean, we left at 6 a.m. and we're out until 4 or so. So
I think
you need to fuel up and.
Well, I think they ran I think they had good shoots for us, and with extended time. Like sometimes these events, especially Sony events, you have so little time to shoot and too much time to eat food because they make it like a food tour instead of a photo tour.
We're going to eat for 3 hours, guys, and you have 20 minutes to shoot after.
Right, but what Canon did here is the first shoot of the day was at Gator Park, Gator what?
I think Land, because I had to do a voiceover for it. Yeah,
and it was close. You know, it was just open for us early, which was actually a good place to shoot because there were a lot of birds close up. Hard to get them flying, but there were a lot of alligators, and it was a good place to test out. And they gave us 2 hours, which we ended up being done early. But I rather have 2 hours and then everybody finish 30 minutes early and then off to the next thing.
Yep, agreed.
Which the next thing was the skate park.
Correct.
And volleyball, where there were volleyball people wearing bathing suits, men and women. And
Correct.
we didn't use a lot of that footage because it was kind of our footage got asked. Literally, it got asked.
Every time I'm like filming the volleyball, all of a sudden someone comes in the frame and I just got a butt shot, and I'm like, oh, well,
and it wasn't me this time. Yeah, so I mean, I was testing out the AAF as we said. You know, I was these women and men are wearing board shorts, so they're longer, and the women are wearing basically bikinis that are thongs. And I'm like, look, I'm trying to get the right composition. I'm putting the woman bending over here on the left side of the frame with the girl serving on the right hand side. This is good composition. It just so happens that there's a whole lot of ass in the frame, and is what it is. It was AAF. It is what it is. But the truth of the matter is we didn't actually put a lot of that content in the video because for respectful reasons, it's like people are going to just take it the wrong way.
There's no need for us to have a bunch of ass shots. And you didn't shoot much of it anyway because you kind of knew right then and there, I'm not going to be using much of these photos to showcase the R7 or R10 because there's a lot of ass.
There was. And I mean, it was wonderful to watch because I like volleyball players.
Because you love the sport of volleyball, right?
I do love those volleyball shorts that they wear indoors. Those girls are tall and wear volleyball shorts, and outdoors they leave nothing to the imagination. Yeah. But anyway,
and it was hot too that day.
It was super hot,
5 degrees, humid.
I also think so. Most of their shoots were pretty good. The skateboarding was good. They had people of all different ages, men, women, or girl. Like one girl was like 12, pulling kick flips, coming up a ramp. She was baller out there. Yeah. And it was good environment. I think volleyball was not a good choice because. Well, I'm not going to lay down in the sand. Yeah. Well, and I'm not going to lay down in the sand when my arms are glistening from sweat and I'm just going to be all sandy. And so we didn't do that. But then we went to a lunch after that. And then after lunch, we had an indoor soccer because what happened is the outdoor soccer got canceled. And so they had to find something else.
Which I think the indoor soccer actually worked in our favor for high ISO type shots, even though the lighting was extremely uneven.
Horrible.
Minus that, I mean, it was a good place to test out the high ISO. Because besides that, everything was outside. And your base ISO half the time, unless you're using a slow lens.
But the problem on a lot of these press trips is that a lot of the people that are there are not really capable of taking great photos in many situations. And so they don't really know how to test a camera because they're not familiar with action and sports. They're just used to reviewing and writing an article.
And it's a tough environment to quickly learn, action and sports. And that's, because you only have so much time. It's tough.
Basically what I'm saying is the other people suck and Steven doesn't want to say it.
Oh, I know exactly what you're getting at. I was trying to...
You were trying to be PC?
Yes. I think we go into a little more detail when we're on these phone calls and not in the public atmosphere.
Oh, yes. Look, there are people that are good photographers out there, and then there's always going to be the people that are just reviewing cameras and they're not really good photographers. And I usually tell them that, and they know that. We did have some fun on the bus, though. There was a lot of good fun. I think we
had some good...
imitating everybody, like how I do Barack Obama or Biden or Clinton or all those guys. I like to mimic not in Bernie, a bad way, but I like to try and talk as if I was someone else.
You like to get a laugh.
I do like
nothing
to get
wrong
a
with
laugh.
that. Nothing wrong with breaking up the silence on these bus trips. But
so anyway, that's how the trip works. It's a short trip. I think Canon did a good job with the setting up the shoots. And I think a lot of people, again, there's always detractors that are like, you don't specify that these guys took you on a trip. I'm like, they pay for our flights, they pay for the hotels, except for that one night where I paid because we went in early. They pay for the food, they set up these shoots. I have no problem with that. That doesn't mean they're going to get a favorable anything. I mean, just look at the Olympus one that I did years ago. That was in Orlando, that was okay, but
it definitely does not. I mean, especially they should know better with you that it will not affect in a positive light the end review or preview, whatever you want to call it.
All I care about,
say it how it is.
Yeah, and all I care about, I mean, on these things, just feed me. Like I have a pretty high standard of eating these days. I like to eat good food, and I'm not gonna eat garbage and then have to function all day. So yes, am I a prima donna when it comes to that? I'm needy in that situation, but I think it's warranted when you have to work. And if you're accustomed to a certain way of health and fitness, that it's important that you keep it up and you don't really deviate too far from the norm. So
I mean, it's a fairly simple ask at the end of the day, too.
At the end of the day, all I really want is, like, really, if you had salmon or grilled chicken and vegetables and a potato, I would be happy. But it's when you start throwing this, like the lunch was not very good. You know what I did at the lunch? I mean, you know what I did at the lunch because you were sitting next to me. But when I looked at the prefix menu, I then asked the waiter for an actual menu from the restaurant, and I went down and I picked stuff off the actual menu that I would want to eat. Which there wasn't a lot of food, though. Their salad was pretty good.
Well, they essentially do these family style dinners at these press events for the most part.
Yeah, and sometimes there's just like, I'll tell you what they had. They had like an artichoke dip. That's not for me. The salad was pretty good. The bread obviously was good because it was good bread. It was
that bread was really good, actually.
It was like grilled. They grilled some of it at the end. But then they bring out like cheeseburger sliders. Yes. And they bring out French fries.
Yes.
And I'm like, I love French fries and all, but cheeseburger sliders I'm not touching with a 10. I ended up getting a tuna tartare. And I just kept loading up on the salad. And obviously I actually was pretty satisfied with a lighter lunch because I prefer the lighter lunch. And then we did a dinner at a Spanish style restaurant where you could pick between a filet or a fish option. I didn't eat the salad because it had ham in it. So I got a Caesar salad I asked for, and then I also ordered the scallops off the menu and I didn't tell Canon. But usually what I would do is like I'll hand the guy my credit card and be like, I'll pay for my own. I don't care. All I care about is eating. I'll be like, I'll pay for this. Usually the companies end up paying for it because they just do.
But you do offer, yeah.
I do offer. I'm like, look, I don't care if I have to pay for it. Just give me the check. I'll pay for my own, just so that I can get what I want, and I have no problem doing that.
This is quality content, by the way.
This is super quality content, Steven.
But this is stuff you would talk to me on the phone about, like for 20 minutes about your food, and I'm like, really?
Like, yeah. I just feel like, yeah. But we talk like this new Fuji, this $2,500 APS-C stack sensor camera. People are leaving comments like, "This is the best. This blows out the R7 out of the water," and you're like, I mean, I guess. It's 40 frames a second. It's a stack sensor. It's $1,000 more.
Well, that's what people. Yeah. The issue is you're comparing $1,000 more expensive camera to the R7. Like, I mean, I would hope it's a little better.
Well,
to a certain extent,
Stephen. In the contrary, some people are going to be like, Jared, but you compared the Z9 to the R7.
Yeah, but it's different when you're going from below to above.
Exactly. It's much different when you're going. Well, the autofocus in this is on par, if not maybe stickier than that. So when it's a $1,500 camera versus a $5,000 camera, that's a different story.
And back to the R7 real quick, just to wrap up that whole trip. I don't want people to assume that editing is a piece of cake on this kind of stuff either. We end up coming home with 3-4 hours of B-roll of Jared shooting, of just B-roll in general of the entire event. And I don't know what we're going to make out of it until I see Jared's photos, and then usually we'll try and revolve everything around them. So once we filmed it, it was what, 35 minutes or 30 minutes roughly of raw footage of you basically talking about both cameras and previewing them, which eventually I think cut down to about 22 minutes. But at that time on Friday, I'm like, I need to start on Sunday. There's absolutely no way I'm going to get this done by midnight on Monday if I start on Monday. So, mid-Sunday, I started basically organizing and importing and proxying everything and just having everything set so I can really go to town Monday. And yeah, I mean, it's not a cakewalk with this stuff. I was up from 5 a.m. until midnight or 1 a.m. Getting this thing done. And that's the tough part about these press trips is sometimes you really only have a day or two to put these previews together. So if people do complain, why did we not talk about certain things? It's just we don't have time. We really don't. We can't cover every little aspect of both of these cameras. So
no, and we also won't. And we also don't call them reviews generally anymore because
you can't when you only use it for one day, barely a day.
Yeah, use it for a day.
First impressions is fine. A first look, a preview,
I like
whatever.
Preview. I like hands-on preview or first look. No, I don't say first look, but preview with a lowercase p, capital REVIEW.
Because I mean, essentially, it's kind of a review. It could be. It really could be.
But we like to get more content out of these things these days. We've learned
break it up,
that a preview video may end up doing more than a review video at the beginning. And so that what we realized is if you call it a review right away, you don't have a lot of ability to make extra content after a while. We've also started adding those 1 year later videos because it's like, wow, that's a good piece of content. People are still interested. 1 year later review. It is a way to get more views on things. And people are like, it's clickbait. I'm like, yeah, it is. That's the point.
And your view of certain cameras will definitely change 1 year later. I mean, look at you switching from the A1 to the R3. Obviously, you've learned more things about the R3 that you prefer that for a reason. And it'd be interesting to see the 6 months later or 1 year later review for the R3. Because me, as someone that might be interested in the R3 or the A1, I would rather click on a 1 year later review to see what you really or don't really like or don't like versus an initial review where you only had it for a couple days or something like that.
And the thing about that is, man, how many shoots do I have with an R1? Sorry, A1, don't tell the people that exists yet.
Shh, not yet, Jared.
The R3, from on the road with the bowlers to the Phillies games to a little bit of everything.
Yep.
I've shot it. And so, 1 year, I'll be writing that 1 year later for the R3. I'll be writing a 1 year later for the Z9.
And I really enjoy editing those videos because it's kind of a full on recap of all of the ancillary content that we did around those cameras into one 12 to 15 minute type video. I mean, you really get a lot of information in a single video. And that's obviously that's always important for me. I like giving out more information. I know we always try and do the infotainment type style videos, but I'm all about information.
Yeah, we want to stir the pot, said no one ever. we don't aim to stir pots. We just make content and say it like it is. But I guess we're going to wrap this up. We'll save these other topics because I've got to get to Photo News Fix because I'm sure Dan has uploaded it.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And I got to get ready to post that. And then Steven and I have to go over titles for it. I already made a thumbnail.
We could have a whole podcast episode about titles. And what we do.
What's the subject line in the email?
Oh.
Titties. I accidentally spelled titties sometimes when I mean to say titles and it just corrects.
And it pops up in my feed, titties. I'm like,
another email with a subject line titties. Which never has breasts in it, unless they're mine.
Well, and when you deal with someone like Jared and his eyes, you tend to... I have to try and decipher a lot of the emails or the text that I get from you.
Because my eyes just misread
things. I think you mean this,
things.
but I don't know.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? You enjoy... I enjoy the conversation stuff. 313-710-9729. The major questions are audio only, keep it like this, or get us back to the table to do podcast style, probably around the poker table, break out the Wheel of Fro, cut it into 4 different sections.
So much work.
I know it is a lot of work. But
remember when I broke that down, I said, Jared, this is the last time we'll be doing this. There's no going back.
Well, that's fine.
Like, it'll be fine. We're done.
Well, we've been done for how many years? 3 years.
Yeah.
So if we come up with something else, it's going to be a little less intense than what we did.
The issue now, though, is that set behind you essentially took up that entire corner where we used to film Raw Talk. So we really only have that front corner left, where you'll see in a upcoming video, which will basically walk through and do a studio tour of all the sets that we're utilizing now in the Fro Factory. You'll see there's not much space left, and that's
just Fro Factory 1, Steven. That's not Fro Factory 2. Fro Factory 2, I don't know when that's going to be.
Breaking news.
I have a meeting with the designer and builder today after work, or 4:15.
Everything's going to be purple.
Yeah, the upstairs is going to be purple, but if we
and you're not joking about that.
Yeah, the upstairs room is purple, but I'll be meeting with them today. I gave them a budget, and they obviously came in higher, so we got to go through and look at where we can save on certain things, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, working on Fro Factory 2, not to move into, but just to basically have as a garage for me to park my car.
Basically. Very expensive garage.
Very expensive. $1 million garage with renovations. So, hey, but the whole idea is if you build it,
they will come.
You never know what's going to happen. Really. So I'll just go into that real quick. I'm just trying to see how much I want to say about what I did. But anyway, I bought the building next to my house because it had parking, right? A garage. And parking in this neighborhood is obviously becoming, no, I can't say obvious because you don't know, but it's extremely difficult in the city.
Yeah.
There's no meter parking. There's no permit parking. It's just you leave your car. You could leave it there for a year if you really wanted to.
It's a gamble trying to find parking.
You know, during the day, as my dad always said, you can tell how good a neighborhood is by how many cars are on the street during the workday. But see, that was more of a thing in the 50s and 60s.
Now. Yeah.
I was going to say that was more in the 50s and 60s, but it's still true on my block or in most places around here. You can drive to you can see that the cars leave because people go to work, and then at 6 o'clock at night, it's very difficult to find parking.
Yeah.
But down the street from the factory, there's a dog park, and at any hour, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, you just see these Xennials and millennials
having a party every day,
sitting there on their phone with their dog. You're like, do you people even work? And they probably work mobilely now,
or they work at night. You never know. But I always question it too. I'm like, damn, you guys, I feel like you're never working. Just always at the dog park.
They work their OnlyFans.
I work for 2 hours a day, but I need a mental health day on top of that.
Yeah, I need a mental health day today because work's just been so stressful. You mean that's called work? But anyway,
yeah.
Working on the Fro Factory 2 and have a budget set aside to build it out.
$3 billion.
It's not $3 billion.
$4 billion.
It's a good budget that's not too high and not too low. It's a pretty high budget. I mean, it's a Lamborghini. If I wanted a Lamborghini, I could buy a Lamborghini for that budget, probably.
Not a couple Porsches?
No. Yes, a couple of Porsches. Yeah, there's a throwback to the old school Raw Talk. One of the reasons putting this together is if I have a garage to put cars in the city, there's the opportunity to review cars from a photographic standpoint. Like, what's his name with Canon does the Nissan Z car thing for Nissan, and Larry Chen. And I talked to him. He's like, yeah, we could get them to send you a review car when they come into the country. And I know other people that review Lambos and Ferraris and just do all of that type of stuff. So having a garage where they can park it securely gives us an opportunity to bring those cool cars in and actually do stuff to make other content. But the main thing is if we build this, I'm building it, and then we'll figure out a use in the future. Maybe it's a production company for future shows that we create that are outside of the YouTube sphere. Yeah. Like maybe that's actually a thing, because that's what we're working on something else. So I'm in the feeling of spend the money, build it, and whatever will present itself when the time is right.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wrap. 313-710-9729. Do you want to continue just to listen to the audio? Do you enjoy this?
Yeah.
Would you like to see us sitting around a table and do it old school style?
It would be strictly just talking head. So, I mean, is that something that you would actually watch, or just something you throw on in the background and you just, solely listen to it?
Well, Steven says that now. Really, does he not realize that I'd still want it to be polished and be really good? Because
I know. That's
always
why,
how it is.
Yeah. And I'm like that too. You know me, I'm quality over anything. So,
well, look, if I could have a third editor, right, a dedicated editor that worked on that for a day, and then worked on shorts and reels, and then picked up other ancillary stuff we needed, I think that would be kind of cool.
I mean, remember, that was essentially Dan's role when he first got hired, was kind of raw talk and then some, smaller content.
Well, then Fix came around, and that's big, and then he does a good job
week right there.
Yeah, with the other videos. But a third person, I could see a full-timer, and we can allocate the funds for it, because if you start doing shorts and reels and you start selling ads, selling sponsored ones, that will pay for that person and then some. And then if you get Raw Talk and it's like, 40, 50, 60,000 views and it's consistent and people enjoy it, you can put plugs in there and generate revenue, which then helps push the business forward. So anyway, anything you want to say, Stephen, before we go?
No, just let us know again if you prefer audio only or video, and we'll go from there. We'll hopefully keep this up. I mean, I would like to give it a couple weeks till we can it or figure out what we're going to do, or
Well, I don't mind spending the hour to have a conversation with you, and then the hour that it takes you to edit. I don't mind. I like having the conversation because we have all these things that pile up during the week that we talk about.
What day would you guys like something like this released? Is Friday a good day so you have the weekend to listen to it while you're outside mowing the grass or something?
I used to do Sunday night originally in 2012. I would put it out Sunday night so people had something to listen to in the morning when they drove to work.
And that's what I would say, either Sunday night or a Friday. I feel like they're nice sweet spots.
Yeah.
But there's also half the world working from home now, so maybe it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't even matter. You just put it out, and people just look forward to having the ability to listen when they want to listen. That's what I do.
The irony, before we wrap this up, is when we did actually do Raw Talk, even in the beginning, I really could not care less for podcasts. I mean, I never really listened. Now I'm obsessed. And I'm a big music guy. I usually prefer music in the car or when I'm working around the house or something like that. But now I'm thirsty for a podcast at all times.
Well, yeah, Stephen loved when I did Daily Froze, because then he had to listen to it to hear what I said, so that he's up to date on the things that I say.
Which I really didn't need to listen to, because you would tell me again anyway.
Be like, Stephen, guess what I did on the podcast today?
Well, and sometimes I'll play dumb and be like, no, I didn't listen yet. Tell me.
And really?
I always want to see if your story lines up.
Sneaky fuck.
Nah, yeah, but nowadays.
Stephen, my stories always line up down to the nth degree, because if I took 17 pictures and said that it was 20, I'd be like, no, Stephen, it was 17.
Oh, it's my favorite when I'll be like, yeah, I got in the factory at 8 a.m. today. It was 8:07 to be exact, Stephen, because that changes things.
No, but I do that for myself.
I know.
I'm like,
it's
yes,
just funny.
Stephen, I got in at 7:23 today. You're like, why 7:23? I'm like, because it feels bad if I say 7:30. It wasn't really 7:30. It wasn't 7:20. It was actually 7:23.
Nobody cares.
Fine, Stephen, we're going to go. All right, Stephen, thank you for being on.
You're welcome.
I mean, you're always technically going to be on, so that's the point.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you. We'll talk to you on another one. Jared Polin, FronosPhoto.com.
Bye.
See ya.